anything that I am going to do with you is in general going to help both of us get better. When in doubt, just focus on helping as opposed to selling. As long as you are goal centric, right, you can find multiple different ways to still get to that goal.
A lot of times they don't even know what their problems are, right? So you have to become what I call a problem finder. You have to ask the right questions at the right time to help them discover what their real problems really are. All right, so wherever you're at today, I want you to think about this question I'm about to ask you. And whether you're driving in a car to your next appointment, you're about to pick up a phone and call a prospect, you're about to follow up with a lead who's on the fence about deciding whether to go with you or a competitor. You're about to enter into a boardroom to go over your proposal after the initial discovery phase. If you're in the gym, whatever you're doing, pay attention to this. And I want you to really think about this question and really think about it deeply, not on the surface. Have you ever wondered what it takes, like really what it takes to be a top 1% salesperson in your industry? The salesperson who makes all the money. The salesperson who gets any promotion they want. Like they turn down promotions sometimes. They have all the respect in the company. The salesperson who leads the office and the company by example by selling far more than anybody else. My next guest is going to answer that question for you. So let me give you a small taste of her background. She is an author and international speaker and president of KO Advantage Group. She is listed as a LinkedIn top sales influencer, Startup Canada's Women Entrepreneur, and Success Magazine's most inspirational blogger. We're going to have to get into that. In 2014, she courageously quit her life to backpack solo around the world. And when she returned, she turned her passion for sales into one of North America's fastest growing sales training programs, KO Sales. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. KO Sales U. Her third book, Sell More Faster, is available now. Please welcome to the show, Miss Kim Orlesky. Kim, how are you?
Thank you so much, Jeremy. I am fantastic. Thanks so much for having me.
How's Canada? Good?
Oh my goodness. We're doing a lot better.
Doing a lot better up there than us. Okay. So, hey, I'm excited to have you on the show today. And I love talking about human behavior and using sales techniques that work with human behavior. What I found that most salespeople, and it's not their fault, but they've learned such old school selling techniques from the dinosaur ages of selling, and they're trying to apply those to today's sophisticated information age buyer, techniques that work against human behavior. So when I find somebody that actually gets it, that understands what's going on, I love talking to you. So let's do this. I want to dive right into your story and give our listeners maybe kind of a feel for your background and how you got to this point where you're one of the elite authorities in the world on sales and on persuasion. Can you tell us a little bit more about your background and how you learned all these skills?
Yeah. I think almost every great salesperson story starts off with something along the lines of, I never thought I was ever going to be a salesperson.
Right.
I actually graduated with a degree in finance, a Bachelor of Commerce, thinking that I was going to sit in front of spreadsheets all day. And when the time came to come find my first career, Xerox approached me and they said, you are actually meant to be a salesperson. You're not meant to sit in front of spreadsheets all day. And I'm like, you have no idea. I'm like, I have a degree.
I love
like I'm not a salesperson. But you know what? I read, coincidentally, I had just finished reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. And he talked entirely about his experience on working for Xerox and how that gave him the education in order to later on become a millionaire. And so, new graduate, I'm like, I want to be a millionaire one day. Like if Robert Kiyosaki says to do this, you go doing this.
Right.
And at the time, and I don't know if it's still the case, but at the time, Xerox was known for having one of the best sales training, processes available. And my analytical mind loves process. And so if you can break sales into a process, it works. I worked for Xerox for 6 years, worked my way up the ranks, left that, worked for a year in medical devices. And you were telling me if you have a few medical device people out there. So my heart goes out to you, all you pharmaceutical, all you medical device people, because you play more of the patience game than anything else.
Yeah.
And then went back to B2B, worked for American Express and a logistics company up here in Canada. So I have a wide variety of sales experience working with everything from, mom and pop business owners all the way to international conglomerates where I would have to be on conference calls with people in Brazil and Europe and, across areas in the US at the same time so that we're available to, talk to about our services.
Now, I was on your website earlier today, and I wanted to find out a little bit more about this traveling. So how you traveled around the world, you left your sales career, you traveled around the world. What was that experience like, and how did it help you start your own business to actually train salespeople how to sell more?
So my quick Yelp review is 5 out of 5, highly recommend. I think that a lot of people want to talk about the travel side. So that is so cool. And that was, I think that was my experience when I first heard somebody doing it, leaving their career to go do this. This wasn't something that, somebody decided to take a gap year between university and their career. And in hindsight, that was one of my biggest regrets, is because I was so excited to finish school and then start a career that I'm like, you know what, there is more things in life than, just jumping into it. So I decided later on that I was going to do it. I was in my 30s by this point. And it was incredible, right? Number one, I succeeded in sales. And so I did have the financial resources. Let's be honest here. Traveling around the world is not cheap. So I was very good at what I did and was able to leverage that in order to finance that journey for myself. But the other thing was it gave me perspective in how other people are building, economies and their business and what does it mean to be, financially independent. I think that's a big goal that a lot of people have, is I want to have financial independence. What does that actually mean? And, and financial independence can mean completely different things if you're living in Arkansas or you're living in the Philippines or you're living, in various
Malibu.
places. Yeah, absolutely. And so, I always recommend, when you can go and travel, because number one, I did this one by myself. And traveling by yourself, I think is highly recommended as well, because you are forced to hang out with the person you're going to spend the rest of your life with, which is yourself. You go through a lot of conversations internally. For me, it was, I went through this very cathartic process of writing about, this journey and what I was going through, which later on led to, me deciding that, number one, I want to spend the rest of my life traveling, right? I'm like, that's, it could be a little bit of a pipe dream, but that's what I want. And I saw young families doing it. And I thought, why couldn't I create a life for my boys, my children and everything? At the time I had no children. So why couldn't I create that? But the other thing was, if I was going to do that, I had to show people what it actually meant. And that, sales was not this adversarial type of conversation, because when you travel around the world, what surpasses amongst cultures is the fact that people are people. And if we treat each other with kindness and respect and, that, anything that I am going to do with you is in general going to help both of us get better. That should be a central pillar to every single sales conversation. And unfortunately, it's just not.
Well, it's not. Most salespeople learn sales skills that are adversarial to the prospect. It's you versus them.
Yeah.
Whereas true salespeople, like the top salesperson in industry, in any industry, understands that instead of pushing, and they push back, you have to learn the right questions to ask that get them to pull you in, because they have problems. A lot of times they don't even know what their problems are, right? So you have to become what I call a problem finder. You have to ask the right questions at the right time to help them discover what their real problems really are. Yeah. And maybe what the problem is doing to them. What are the root causes of the problem and how are the problems actually affecting them? Okay. So once you learn how to do that and you start to work with them as two people working on solving a problem, with your solution, selling becomes really easy, and it's not stressful. You don't have this anxiety about like, oh my gosh, I think they're going to cancel tomorrow, because they've persuaded themselves that they want to change their situation with what you're offering. You're like a facilitator in that conversation.
Yeah, and I like to look at it, I mean, we used to talk a lot about, that problem-centric type of approach. I like to look at it from much more of a goal-centric type of approach, where the problem isn't that I need to have this solved. It's rather that this is where I deserve to be. Like, this is the goals I have for my organization. This is the goals I have for my department. And the problem is really, how do I get to there as fast or efficiently, or, reduction of costs, as possible.
Yeah, the problem is holding them back from the real objective that they want.
Yeah, and I mean, the nice thing about going in from a very goal-centric place is that when the sales cycle stalls, which almost always will, not every sales cycle, but when the sales cycle does stall, if you come from a goal-centric place, you remind the client, this is where you want it to be in 6 months, in a year, 2 years. How are you going to do that? And it's like, oh yeah, that's right. Whereas if we come in very problem-centric, which is like, let's say it's like, my website sucks. My problem is I'm not converting enough people on my website, and something else happens, because it always does. It's like, yeah, but you said your website sucks. How are you going to, and you're like, yeah, but there's other stuff that's happening in my business.
Right. Yeah. It's what those problems are doing to them that's preventing them from achieving their objectives.
Absolutely. There's the saying, I mean, it's a terrible saying, but the saying is there's 100 ways to skin the cat. Right. And, the idea behind this is that, as long as you are goal centric, right, you can find multiple different ways to still get to that goal. Oftentimes I'm in the very fortunate position that I get to be a business owner as well as a salesperson, which unfortunately a lot of salespeople just don't. Salespeople in general make the best business owners. Let's be clear, right? Because we have so much exposure to so many businesses. But when I'm in business owner mentality and I have salespeople coming to me, it never fails that, somebody has something to solve my problem, something to solve my problem, something to solve my problem. And as a business owner, I'm like, no, my goal is to double year over year. My goal is to do this. Tell me how your solution is going to support that in a way that is going to be easy, quick, and get me the results as quickly as possible.
The results you want.
And if you can't define that, I'm sorry, call me back in 3 months.
Exactly. And I was on your website a little bit earlier. You talk a lot about how sales conversations align with personal relationships. Tell us more about what you mean by that.
Oh my goodness. So, and I think this is where a lot of people forget is that, I'm one of my catharsis, when I was doing a lot of writing, when I was traveling is, at the time I was going through this, terrible breakup, and I was trying to understand what was going on. Sure. The funny thing is that so much, one of the reasons why Success Magazine called me their most inspirational blogger was because I took that idea of how do these personal relationships evolve and unfold, and how does that actually align with a business relationship. And oftentimes you'll always see the salesperson that says, well, you never propose marriage on the first date and everything. And it's yes, of course not. But take it back to more fundamentals, right? What does it mean to be, someone seen as honest and as, willing to be trusted? If you're on a date or you're creating a friendship with somebody, we should be trusted. When COVID hit, one of the very first things I got people calling me was oh, this isn't the right time to contact, our clients. We shouldn't be contacting our prospects. There's so much going on for them. And I said, here's the thing is that if one of your friends, your cousin, your sibling, something else like this was going through one of the hardest times that they'd ever gone through, and they had no idea what was going to happen, do you say, I love my brother, I love my sister so much that I'm just going to completely avoid them for the next 6 months, and hopefully when I call them, things will be better? I said, no, you get on the phone and you say, listen, I am here for you. And you provide specific examples of how you can be there for them. Now, this may be relevant to a sales cycle. It may not be, but every sales cycle is involved in a relationship. How much do I trust Jeremy? Do I believe that Jeremy will be there for me if something goes wrong?
Sure. Yeah. Like I said, there's the trusted authority that they look upon, to lean upon, to help solve challenges that they're having, no matter what it is, even in a pandemic, for sure.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of times, and I want to talk to you about this, a lot of times, in sales training, a lot of salespeople struggle with prospecting or, closing. Why was it important for you to focus really on the proposal process? You talk a lot about that on your website. Tell us more.
Yeah. So, I mean, the funny thing is I could build my entire business between prospecting and closing. Those are the two things. But the reason why I wanted to focus a little bit more on the proposal and specifically the way the proposal is outlaid is because if you can get that right, everything you have done before that point in time, you've done right. And part of the joy of these 6-slide proposals, number one, it's simple, but number two, it focuses you very specifically on the right questions to ask. And we should really start with the end in mind. Stephen Covey, if the shortest distance to the dollar is I deliver this proposal, the client says yes, and then they agree to contract with me, how do we increase that? So now it's like, 50, 60, 80, 90, hopefully it will be a 100%, but it's not likely to get to 100%. Yeah. How do you make that stronger? And then if that's not strong enough, then we start to move backwards and we start to move backwards until we start to see where the cracks in the foundation are happening. Yeah. But everything starts, it starts with the end, which is that proposal, the last opportunity for me to say, you are my prospect and now you're my client. How do I bridge this relationship to make you feel comforted that this is going to take care of you?
So what, and that being said, let's start backwards here. What should a salesperson not put in a proposal that so many do? Let's start there.
Yeah, and I think this is where people get lost, is that they confuse the idea of a proposal with a contract, with an agreement, with like statements of work, scopes of work. Oftentimes, we want to make sure that, we're not confusing what is going into a proposal, and rather that this is something that we provide our clients to say in general, yes to this relationship, and then we work out the details. Going back to the analogy of romantic relationships, we don't confuse the proposal with our significant other with prenups and marriage certificates and all of the vows that we're going to say when we're ready to get married. The proposal is this point in time where from the highest level we should say yes. And if the client can't say yes at the highest level, then you have to go back to the drawing board.
Okay, that makes sense. And then what do you think they should focus on in that proposal? We talk about a 6-slide proposal, which we'll get into that in a second, but what should they really be focusing on in that proposal? They're obviously not going to put in the crazy lingo that you just focused on that they could say no to. You want them to say yes, but what should they put in that proposal?
So when I say the 6-slide proposal, I want to be clear that this should be as simple as possible. So we talked about goals, right? If you can't, your first slide should always be, where does a client want to be in the next year, 2 years, 5 years, whatever that is, something very guiding light focused.
So their objectives, like they're from the initial discovery call, you found out their objectives. So in the proposal, you should talk about their objectives of where they're wanting to go.
Yes, and the objectives should be irrelevant whether they choose to go with you or not. This is the first slide. This is so important because whether I choose you as a vendor or not, whether I choose to invest in your product or not, no matter what, that is where I want to go. The reason why we put that is because, number one, this is what the client has decided even before they met you. Their goals and aspirations should not have changed because you have entered this relationship. This should have been something that they were focused on ahead of time. Number two, it's an easy way for them to say, yes, you get me. Like, yes, you understand. And number three, if you don't understand where they want to be in 2 years, 5 years, 10 years time, how will your product or service ever support that?
Well, yeah, you hit it right on the head. You're in that proposal. If you're going over maybe 2 or 3 things, 2 or 3 problems they said that they had that's preventing them, and then you're mainly focused on their goals and objectives, where they want to go. What does that show to them? It shows that you were present in that first conversation, that you get them, you're listening to them, you're the trusted authority. Whereas most salespeople, I guarantee you, are not doing that. They're just putting together more of probably some type of quote and contract.
They are. The worst proposals I've ever seen are, let me tell you about my business. Let me tell you about me. Let me blah, 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 blah. Like,
Right.
imagine being on a first date with somebody and saying, like, let me show you how amazing I am and what all my previous like boyfriends and girlfriends have said about me in the past. Right? You're like,
Right. That's true. It's
okay.
so true, right?
So yes, so you want to make sure that you have their goals and objectives in mind. No matter what, I mean, it starts the conversation off on the right foot. And being on the buyer side, if somebody said this, like, listen, Kim, this is what you've told me where you want to be in the next 3 5. I'm like, yeah, you're right. Like, darn right, you're right. Like, that
Yeah.
is exactly. It makes me excited.
Yeah, you're thinking like a buyer rather than
Yes.
thinking like a seller. And the
Yes.
prospects pick up on that feeling, right? I mean, you can just feel it, right? You feel whether there's pressure in that conversation or not pressure. How is it different than an automated proposal software like PandaDocs or Proposify?
Yeah, I mean, there is value in some of those automated tools, but I want to be clear that the only reason we should use those tools is so that we can follow up when somebody does eventually look at the contract and the agreement, and that they're ready. Your proposal should not be entirely through PandaDocs, Proposify, or any of those other softwares, because the proposal, the same as a romantic relationship, should be delivered in person. This should be, let me show you how amazing it is to go from my prospect to my client.
Right.
And if you really don't care about the relationship, that's when you go ahead and you send them an email. Like, I highly doubt I would have ever said yes to my husband if he would have proposed to me like via an email, like, hey baby, you want to get hitched or something? Like, here's a JPEG of a ring, you can tell me what you think. Like, okay, I need to see a quarter to like understand comparison.
It's so true, right? It's relationships are very similar to the sales cycle. 100%, I get that. So they can still use the tools, but they really have to customize it depending on the prospect situation.
It should be customized, and it should come after the formal proposal, right? Like, it should, unless you are a transactional only, right? And transactional is usually like less than $2,000. I can invest in that without having to spend a lot of time to think about it. Does this make sense for my business or doesn't it? Anything getting above $2,000, depending on the level of person, right? I mean, there's going to be some procurement people that are going to be like, well, anything less than 10,000 or 30,000 or something, I don't even think about it. I just transact. But you start to get to a point where anything above that transactional level then needs to be a delivery in person. And when in doubt, deliver it in person, right? As opposed, go with over than under in this case.
It's 100%. It's just like if a prospect emails you an objection, rather than emailing back a response, pick up the phone and call them, because you might be interpreting that objection in email completely different than the way they mean it, right? But you can't tell that reading an email compared to hearing their voice, or maybe even a Zoom or Skype call where you actually see them, like, right? So it's completely different. You always want to do that. Wait, let me ask you this. I'm going to throw you a curveball. Let's say because I always want our salespeople to be able to get off this call and be like, you know what? Today I'm changing this in my proposals, baby. This is what I'm going to do because of Kim. But another question I have for you, if somebody, let's say that you start in your discovery part of that call before you've done the proposal, right? Because obviously if somebody just says, hey, send me a proposal, and somebody just sends them a proposal without first discovering what their issues are, what's going to happen most of the time? That's going to be dead. So if somebody said, hey, Kim, yeah, I just don't have time to talk. I don't really have time. Like, just send me a proposal. How would you respond to that?
I'd be like, well, then let's book a Zoom meeting, right? I mean, I would never, like, I just never ever send the proposal via any type. I mean, you've discounted the entire relationship down to a number, and if the client does not have the time to meet with you, like in this moment, like, you're my prospect, you becoming my client. If they don't have the time to meet you, then when are they going to have the time to actually sign the contract? When are they going to have time to actually accept delivery? When are they going to have the time to do any of this other stuff?
Yeah.
if they're shopping around, I mean, call the spade, right? Sometimes we do have to deliver pricing before the proposal. I'm actually a big believer in delivering pricing before the proposal because it helps to set expectations. I have yet to ever see somebody who has no idea, no clue on what the pricing is, and the first time they see it be like, yes, that is like, I'm gangbusters, I'm all over that. If that is the case, that tells me that your price too low, right? And that's a big 100%. Sign.
And one thing we train salespeople, because we see it so many times where they get on initial call and the prospect says, I just don't have time, just send me a proposal. And within the first minute or a minute and a half, I mean, that's literally, like you just said, like proposing through about marriage with somebody you don't even know anything about, right? You don't know what their challenges are, their problems are. So we teach people to say, which is very effective. If they say that, you say, yeah, I'd be open to putting together a proposal for you. But to be frank, I'm not quite sure I can even help you yet. Would it make sense if we asked each other a few questions about your situation? And then what I can do is go back and put some information together for you that might be useful for you. Would that be appropriate? And people are like, yeah, that would be appropriate, right? Because it makes sense. You can't just throw out a proposal without knowing what their situation is, if they even have a problem. 100%. Now, that moves me into my next question. You said that the 6-slide proposal has been used to close some sizable deals, including a few 6-figure ones. When you said, did you already mention that the transactional sale is really where that you don't have to do that? Specify that a little bit more for some of our people who are in that type of sale.
Yeah, I mean, if you're in the transactional, I mean, to put together a 6-slide proposal and deliver it in person can be overkill, right? Let's be honest with that. So where it does make sense is, does the person have to think about it? Do they have to run by somebody? Are you selling something invisible for a premium price, right? Whereas, if I was to give you a mug, we can probably create a tangible price for that mug. Whereas if you're selling something that is more service consulting related, like at the end of the day, it's not that I can touch or feel training. I can't touch or feel, marketing. I can't touch and feel different things. What does that ultimately mean? So yes, right. I mean, we want to, the nice thing is that even in simplicity, right? Even if you're selling, 50,000, 100,000, 250,000, I use the 6-slide proposal when I was working for American Express and doing transaction sizes of $4.1 million. Sure. This is where simplicity actually is a relief to people, right? We shouldn't, if you can't say it in 6 slides, and I'm gonna, I don't know if we covered it, but if you haven't, bookmark where, like this moment right now, grab a pen and paper, because the 6 slides are goals and aspirations. Number 2 is current state. Number 3 is ideal state. Number 4 is your timeline, and that's actually the selling slide. A lot of people forget that. That's the selling slide. Then you get into your solution, and then you get into your return on investment. Those are the 6 slides. And if you can't do that as simple as possible, then where are you overcomplicating the process?
Sure. Well, and prospects today, when we call them the information age buyer, they don't have time to set through an hour proposal process or go through a 40 or 50 page document or proposal. Like if somebody even emails me more than 2 sentences, I don't even look at it because I don't have time.
It's so true. It's so true. Like if I have to scroll, I'm like, you've lost me.
If I read more than legitimately 2 sentences, I don't even read it. Like it could be like, hey, you've won $100 million and the Price is Right lottery or whatever down on the 3rd paragraph. And I would never know because I never would take the time. And you got to realize, especially when you're talking to, well, it doesn't even matter. Whether it's a business owner, whether it's a stay-at-home mom, it doesn't matter. Everybody's busy and they just don't have time to read long-winded proposals. So I love the idea of the 6-slide proposal, and you're focusing on their objectives, their goals, their current state, like what their problems are, their challenges, and really where they want to go, their future state. Where is that future state? Where do they want to go? And then, oh, by the way, here's our solution that will help you get there. And here's really your potential return on investment. That's powerful. That's going to get somebody to really consider using your solution to solve their challenges, to get them results. I have to ask you this. Did your husband use this method to get you to say yes to his proposal?
You know what, though? The funny thing is, like, whether it was on paper.
6-slide proposal. At the restaurant.
But it's baby, look at all the things you want to do, and here's how together we're going to help you get there. You know what? Yeah, he doesn't, you don't have to necessarily do it on paper. And I think this is where the value comes in with even transactional sales too, is that if you understand that methodology and you can communicate it, it's always good. And trust me, if you can do it, like, they'll always say yes.
I see, you got the ring. You got the ring.
I got the ring.
You trained them up well. So what's, in kind of departing our conversation today, what's one big of it? We've got the pandemic stuff going on. What's one big piece of advice you'd give a salesperson right now that might be finding it harder to sell because of what's going on?
When in doubt, just focus on helping as opposed to selling. Anytime I've ever found myself in a sales slump, and if you're not there yet, you're going to be at some point in your life, because we always get there from time to time, I give myself a 30-day rule. And I say, you know what, for the next 30 days, I am purely just going to create relationships. I'm going to find out what they need, who do they need to be connected with. And almost overnight, like within 2 weeks, you'll find yourself with more sales opportunities, because you actually didn't focus that on that particular piece, but just people are people and they want to be helped.
100%. Yeah, you're focused on, you're not focused on making the sale. You're really instead focused on whether there's a sale to be made in the first place. Like, you're focused on what problems do these people have or this company have, and how can I actually help them solve that? And when you start thinking that way, they feel that. So, I can't thank you enough for being on here today. Where can our listeners learn more about you and your training? Like, where can they go to really learn about what you do, especially with this proposal process? Like, I'm telling you, there are thousands of salespeople that are listening to this right now that are doing the proposals 30, 40, 50 pages long, slides long, and beating their head against the wall. I'm saying, I've got a solution. They've got a problem. Why are they not buying? Yeah. Where can they learn about this process that you've built out?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, definitely Google. We have lots of webinars, lots of content on that. But the best place to go to is actually, I'm going to give it to your entire base to actually download the entire copy of my book, Sell More Faster. You can go to bit.ly/Sell More Faster book, and you get the entire version for free. If you prefer to hold on to it, contact a small book owner. Okay, go to one of your small bookstores, ask them to specially order it. I don't think Jeff Bezos needs any more of your money, but a local company would be happy to specially order it for you, and then you can actually go and pick it up.
Yeah, so go to bit.ly, that's ly/Sell More Faster book. Download Kim's book, start to go through it, apply what she's talking about when your proposal process 100%. There's an old saying that says less is more. And you really hit it on the head with the proposal process. So I can't thank you enough for being on here, Kim. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. It was an absolute pleasure.
Now, if you're serious about joining the top 1%, I mean the top 1%, and you want to experience more training content just like this, click the links right over there. Right over there, they're exactly what you need to see next. You see, I release new episodes featuring top salespeople and sales authorities, multiple six-figure, high six-figure, even 7-figure earners every Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday every single week at 10 a.m. Eastern, 7 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. And if you're new here, do yourself a favor and smash that subscribe button right below, and join our new Facebook group, Sales Revolution. You see, it's free, and there's a link in the description below just for you. We put it there for you. Finally, I make posts on Facebook and Instagram each and every day with more tips and training, so be sure and follow me and turn on your notifications. So make a comment in the first 7 minutes to any of my latest posts, share this episode, and there's a very real chance that you're going to win some killer prizes. And here's the thing, don't sit on the sidelines. Don't be like everyone else. Get into the game. Join the sales revolution. Stay active, get involved, learn the right skills, and we will show you how to take your life and income to a level that most only dream about. Stay safe. Talk to you soon.